This is All About Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. Our host, Christine Lee. Let's have a live look at Bitcoin right now. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XVX index is at $36,173. A bit of a bounce over the past 24 hours of about 4%. Earlier in the day, Bitcoin was just below $33,000, so some buyers out there. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
Hear the music. Bitcoin appears oversold on technical charts, according to CoinDesk's Omkar Gaboli. Demand from whales or large crypto investors remains elusive, signaling a low probability of a quick trend reversal higher. Bitcoin's 14-day relative strength indicator looking there, a popular momentum indicator dipping under 30, supposedly hitting lifetime lows and representing oversold conditions. An under 30 RSI reading means the market has fallen too fast and bears may now take a breather, leaving the market range bound. Bitcoin trading in a sideways manner above $30,000 for several weeks following the previous oversold reading registered on May 20th of 2021. That said, the RSI, just like other technical studies, isn't reliable as a solitary indicator. Crypto traders often read overbought and oversold RSI readings with blockchain metrics like whale demand, derivatives, market data, as well as macro factors. So far, there are no signs of renewed buying by large investors, with supply held by entities owning at least 1,000 BTC stagnant. Options market activity continues to lean bearish, and persistent fears of earlier than expected and faster interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve and U.S.-Russia tensions may push the safe haven dollar higher and keep Bitcoin bulls at bay. All right, joining us now to discuss Bitcoin price and more is Rich Rosenblum, co-founder and president of GSR Markets in Puerto Rico there. Hello there, Rich. So what's behind this fall in your view, and how low can Bitcoin go? What's the bottom?
Great question. I think number one is obviously macro, which is driven by rates. And we've had an extreme rally over, say, a decade, which I don't think it's coming to an end, but at least a pause with the change in the rates regime. I think the other is the executive order. Biden said it's coming out in roughly a month, which is going to say how the regulatory regime in the U.S. is going to look at crypto in a more holistic way. So even if that's potentially bullish long term, I think it creates more fear in the short term and could cause some positioning shuffles. In terms of a floor, it's very hard to call the broader macro regime. We've rallied so much. If there was another 20% drop in S&P, I could see Bitcoin dropping another 10,000. But then again, there's a lot of uncertainty in the space. It's still bleeding edge tech that there's a lot of future promise in. But in terms of what's going to happen over this next few months, it's anybody's game. But I think that the long-term bull market is still intact. And I think the same way we had in March 2020, could be able to pick up some Bitcoin on a discount or other crypto assets. We're seeing a similar picture here where even though the macro markets continue to fall over this past 24 hours, Bitcoin's catching up.
Are you seeing this as a buying opportunity? And I wonder, what is your strategy on weathering this downturn?
I think that staying away from leverage and scaling into a position on the way down, probably the 2 points I'd stick with. Less of a day trader. I think that if you're hodling for the long term, these are good levels to add.
How are the options markets doing? Are they leaning bearish, or are you mentioned stay out of leveraged positions, but are you still seeing leveraged positions out there? Have they been shaken out?
I think compared to traditional markets where volatility pops when the market falls, crypto, the positioning is that there's a lot of call buyers, and so vol tends to go up as the market's rallying. So we've seen, for the most part, vol markets soften these past 2 weeks, aside from on Friday where there was a big drop. But yeah, I think we'll probably see more people entering the market and buying calls over this next 2 weeks so that they can limit their downside but still keep that leverage to the upside.
It's interesting you say that because you would think this is a buying opportunity, but so far the whales, institutional buyers, have not been taking the current prices, although we are seeing a modest bounce right now. But where are the buyers, and why do you think that is, that they're holding back?
I think there's the phrase, people don't want to catch a falling knife, and there's really a retail type mindset where people are viewing what's been happening in the market and thinking that momentum will continue. Once we stabilize, I think people step back in, but for now, sort of watching the headlines and macro and waiting for that stabilization to occur.
Do you think we're in a correction or a bear market?
I think that it does feel like we're potentially in a bear market for macro, but does that mean that it's going to be a bear market for crypto? It's yet to be seen. I think we're still in a bull market for crypto.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of alts, or where you're seizing opportunities elsewhere, how do you see the outlook outside of Bitcoin?
I think with the new regimes we're looking at, with gaming, play to earn, NFTs, the metaverse, these are still very young areas, and still a lot of new entrepreneurs coming into the space. So I think those are probably areas where they're going to be not safe from macro, but a little less correlated than inflation protected type assets. So if you do have those macro type fears, I think those are good areas to stick with. And there's probably the most adoption we've seen in NFTs and gaming. So there will be metrics to look at that are sort of outside the trading oriented metrics.
All right, Rich, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your insights. That was GSR Markets President Rich Rosenblum. Coming up, we've got top stories plus more Bitcoin price analysis with foreign exchange services firm OANDA.
Hi, I'm Jen Sanasi, co-founder of Streambed and co-host of The Hash. You're watching CoinDesk TV.
Welcome back. Bitcoin touching a 24-hour low earlier of just under $33,000. Its market cap sitting at about $680 billion, halved from about $1.3 trillion at its November peak. As of last Friday, crypto is no longer a $2 trillion asset class, now settling at around $1.6 trillion, according to CoinMarketCap. Most major cryptocurrencies suffering double-digit losses over the weekend amid a market correction that is also clawing at tech stocks. While whales or larger holders of Bitcoin may be holding off from buying back in, El Salvador President Nayib Bukele is buying the dip with about $15 million worth of Bitcoin being bought using public funds. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is looking to orchestrate policies and regulations for crypto. Bloomberg reporting that a forthcoming executive order due as early as next month may ask federal agencies to determine crypto's risks and opportunities for the United States. Finally, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission telling MicroStrategy, the enterprise software company that just so happens to hold over 124,000 Bitcoins, cannot use unofficial accounting measures to smooth out Bitcoin fluctuations in its public filings. Right, joining us now to discuss Bitcoin price is Craig Erlam. Senior market analyst at FX services firm OANDA. Hello there, Craig. So a very choppy, volatile market right now. And I wonder, what's your price analysis? Are you selling or buying in these markets?
The difficulty right now with Bitcoin is that it's not a Bitcoin story almost that's driving this. This is a broader market story. So ordinarily, you'd be looking at that $30,000 price level, which we haven't come too far from. And you'd be looking at the price action from the last year. We've hit that level more than half a dozen times. And each time it's been very well protected. So ordinarily, you'd be looking at that level and saying, well, this could be a very big level of interest. But then, like I say, it's the broader markets which is driving this. It's broader risk appetite in the markets, and I'm not sure that's done. So I think this $30,000 level is going to be critical in terms of the price action for Bitcoin going forward. I don't think this is going to last forever. I do think it's going to have its day again, and I do think there's going to come a time in the not too distant future when the focus is going to be more on Bitcoin related stories. There were so many positive stories for Bitcoin last year, and they are going to arrive again. But for now, because it's being caught up in the storm that's really happening in the markets right now, then I do think that $30,000 level is going to be really heavily tested potentially in the coming days and weeks.
It's interesting you say that, because many folks say, well, Bitcoin is not correlated with traditional markets, with traditional stocks, and that it moves to its own drumbeat. But we're definitely not seeing that today and over the past weekend. So how do you see Bitcoin correlated with, do you see it structural? Do you see it cyclical? Do you see it correlated to traditional markets?
I think it is correlated to an extent, because I do think it is still a high-risk instrument, and therefore, when you look at other high-risk instruments, the Nasdaq is a clear example of that. It does seem to be quite well aligned to the Nasdaq, more so than other risk assets like the Dow or the S&P. It does seem to be those higher risk tech stocks that seem to be more aligned to Bitcoin. It is something in itself, and I think that is a really important point. So often everyone's trying to align it with something. Bitcoin is this, Bitcoin is that. It's almost trying to give it credibility by comparing it to things like gold. Bitcoin is its own instrument, and other cryptocurrencies are the same. And therefore, I think we need to remember that. But then all of it typically does fall into a risk bracket, and I think that's where we are seeing it being really dragged down by broader markets right now, by the fact that risk appetite has taken such a beating this month. It was inevitable that Bitcoin was going to be dragged down within that. But like I say, at some point, more cryptocurrency, Bitcoin-related stories going to come out. And if it's anything like last year, then there could be a lot of positivity to be had. It's just a case of when those stories are going to appear and how much pain can be suffered in the interim.
What do you see as the floor for Bitcoin? Can we go lower, or do you see it range bound from here on out?
So as I say, $30,000 for me is so critical because it's become such a big psychological area over the last 12 months, then I think how it holds above here is going to be extremely telling. If it can survive the next week or so, if the market's continuing to be as turbulent as we've seen, if it can survive 30,000 over that week or two, I think that's going to be extremely encouraging, and maybe some of those whales will start to appear again potentially. If that 30,000 breaks, then I think there could be a lot of pain, because I think that's just such a massive floor in price. And as your previous guest alluded to, it's those leverage positions where you can see those levels suddenly become even more critical, and where you can see these positions quickly unwind, and all of a sudden you've got these sharp moves to the downside. You saw a small example of it to an extent at 40,000 once that fell. The move after that was quite fast. My fear is for something like Bitcoin is that if 30,000 breaks in a similar manner, then the reaction could be sharp to the downside. And then things like 20,000 become extremely key after that. But again, it all really depends on, like I say, how long this storm lasts in the markets. So come Wednesday, say the Federal Reserve sells its position well, keeps the markets on board, stabilizes things in the broader markets, then I think Bitcoin will see the benefit. But if we don't see that this week and we see a broader tech sell-off, maybe Apple reports some dreadful results, Tesla, etc., get caught up in all of this, then I think risk appetite again will take a big hit. And unfortunately for Bitcoin, it will fall alongside it, I think.
All right, Craig, thanks for your analysis. Appreciate you coming on the show. That was OANDA Senior Market Analyst Craig Erlam. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee. We'll do it all over again tomorrow at 3 o'clock in New York. Also join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern for First Mover. You're watching CoinDesk TV.